Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to do a breakdown for the new the trailer for the new Kevin Smith movie, Killroy Was Here. Now this is a very weird film. It's toted. Kevin Smith totes it as an anthology, similar to Creep Show. It's a horror comedy. It's a legitimate horror comedy, as opposed to a movie like Tusk that he did, which was just weird and awkward and made very little sense. And honestly, it's interesting, but it's interesting to me because it feels like maybe this is one plot line that's just been chopped up into a bunch of different segments. So basically, just to dive into the actual trailer itself, once we get to the end, then I'll kind of explain a little bit more about the film, or at least what I know of it. But we start off in the trailer, and it feels kind of a lot like, kids are making these drawings and stuff like that, and we see the Killroy meme, or the Killroy, graffiti or symbol, whatever you want to call it, where it's the little guy with the big nose poking his head over the fence, and it says "Killroy was here," it became a common thing back in like the post World War II America. There's versions of it that exist in various other countries as well, including England and I believe Australia as well. But for whatever reason, it's supposed to be each of these segments is supposed to have something to do with the Killroy symbol or meme or whatever. It has something to do with that. And it feels like there's a few different things, but they don't really separate them all that well, because it feels like there's only really two major differences in the trailer. And there's that first section where they're going through all these kind of weird things, and you see all these kids' pictures and stuff, and it comes up a little bit later on, too, in the trailer, but you see all these, pictures the kids have drawn and stuff like that, and it kind of cuts away at the end where you see, like, this really weird, scary face and stuff. Again, it's supposed to be a horror comedy. Even though the trailer does feel like a horror comedy, I feel like there's more horror than comedy. You also have Jason Mewes, who appears to be playing a school janitor who just kind of walks around and cracks jokes, which is amusing, by the way. I do like that aspect of it. I love Jason Mewes. He's hilarious. But, you look at, everything that we see in the trailer, and it actually could probably just be one story. So I'm kind of curious about that. This also came from an original script from Kevin Smith called Anti-Clause, which he wrote a while ago. I believe the original draft of it was somewhere around like the 2014, 2015 era. And then the movie Krampus came out in 2015 and basically derailed that whole thing, because it was supposed to be kind of a take on the Krampus myth. But now that's evolved into this. So I'm curious if we're going to see a lot of that type of a bleed over as well. But that first segment, you have the drawings, and then it cuts away, and then it goes to Jason Mewes, and we see all these different characters, and they're explaining this like Victor Crowley-esque character who's like eating people's legs in Vietnam. And then we go to this other section where this big hulking monster is murdering people, and I assumed it was the Victor Crowley thing, where it was this guy who was this crazy cannibal and stuff like that, and then he died and came back to life or something along those lines, the standard kind of monster creation type of thing for a horror film. And he came back as a mutated freak who, murders and eats people. So, I could have seen that or something else. Maybe those were two different segments. Maybe the whole thing with the guy's a cannibal and the monster thing are a separate segment. They don't specify really, actually, and I don't think it has been specified how many segments are in the actual film. Which I think is kind of interesting, because I know like Scare Package, which is another film I reviewed on here a little while back, it was 8 different shorts, which really was more like 6 or 7. So they kind of lied a little bit with that, but that was a toting point. So I'm curious. There's at least 3 segments that I can tell in this. Maybe there's one more. Kevin Smith didn't really get too outstanding of a cast. Some more recent regulars of his, you got Chris Jericho. You also, his daughter, of course, has to be in it somehow because she's in every single one of his movies now. And yeah, I kind of get that a little bit, because Kevin Smith really made a name for himself by basically just casting all of his friends in the movies that he was making. But at the same time, it feels a little bit more like a cash-in when it's your kid, and they don't really have too much acting talent. So, again, that's his aesthetic choice. But I mean, she can have her funny moments. I'm not going to lie about that. But it doesn't inspire confidence when I see her name on a cast list for a movie that he's doing. But aside from that, I mean, like I said, I can't judge the film on the cast, because sometimes you can get really good performances out of not so good actors if you have good direction and good writing, which again is something I'm a bit worried about with Kevin Smith considering his more recent films. But as we're going into that second part of the trailer, we get to see all this stuff about this cannibal guy, and they show him eating a leg in Vietnam, and then the end of it I think is where we have the problem, because this trailer does and does not commit the cardinal sin of trailers. It doesn't give away a terrible amount about the story because there's multiple stories in this anthology. There might even be ones that we don't even see in the trailer. So it's not giving away everything, but it is giving away some stuff, like the cannibal guy story, and the whole thing with a little bit of the cannibal guy story. We don't know how that necessarily plays out or pays off. And then but at the end of the trailer, we see all these scenes of this hulking monster just with all these great gore effects just murdering the shit out of all these people. Various people that we've seen throughout the trailer. So why then, those are your money shots. Those are the things you want to maybe put one in there. Maybe put like a good one. Like there's one at the very end where it shows this woman who's been like basically sliced from her shoulder all the way down to her navel by something, a giant, jagged piece of metal or a sword or something like that. And this monstrous creature is just like standing behind her. Then they do this cut to Jason Mewes. He says, "Oh, well, gotta go get the mop." And something like that, because it's a kind of a fun pun and a joke. If you had just had that, I think that would have been just fine to end off this trailer. But they showed all of these gore scenes before that should have just been left to the film. I think that was way too much. I don't think you needed to show that much in the trailer, because I think you gave away a lot of the really good moments that people are going to want to sit through if they're going to sit through that particular short or this series of shorts. You're giving away a lot with that. Now again, it doesn't technically break the law of trailer or the cardinal sin of trailers, which is the trailer gives away the movie, but it does do it in a horror sense, especially with a movie like this, because it looks like they're toting a lot of those practical effects in this trailer and stuff like that, and things. It's not just a CGI monster or something. It actually looks relatively interesting and relatively good, especially compared to maybe some other stuff like Kevin Smith's Tusk, which is god fucking awful. There's a 10-minute monologue in that movie about walrus penises. It's just so fucking weird. But it's not a very long trailer. It's only it's an average length. It's about 2 minutes. And Kevin Smith put it up on his personal YouTube page, as well as I'm sure he posted it on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff as well. But the weird thing with this movie is that Kevin Smith has never really, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't really directed an anthology. And directing an anthology, I don't know if he's just executive producing these shorts, and there's some individual directors that are also helping out. I do know that he wrote the movie itself, so maybe he just got different directors to do the different segments, but he wrote the segments himself along with I can't remember his co-writer's name, but this is actually the first time he's had a co-writer on a project that he's been directing, or at least partially directing. Because like I said, normally when you do anthologies, at least these days, usually you get multiple directors to do multiple stories, and then you mesh them into one. Again, Scare Package did something like that. And in this case, it seems like Smith is going to has written and directed all of the segments, so it's all going to feel like Kevin Smith, which I don't, unless you're going with drastically different genres, which I think in some cases you are, in some cases you're not. Like the cannibal story and the mutant murderer story are kind of, it feels like those could be linked together, so I don't even know, so those might feel very similar. So I think maybe if he was going for like a different genre every time, like, okay, this one's going to be a ghost in the old house story, this one's going to be a slasher homage, this one's going to be a homage a la like a Universal monster movie. We're going to have one that's kind of and keep going, and have those be different kinds of horror that is not necessarily related to one another, so you can get drastically different stories by the same director. But it doesn't necessarily seem like they're going that route. So that has me a tad concerned, as well as Kevin Smith's very spotty track record in the last 5 to 10 years, because really after he left the View Askew universe, as he dubbed it, with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which I believe was either 2000 or 2001, he didn't return until Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. So, I am worried a little bit about the differentiation between the different anthologies themselves. If they were going to be similar or even connected in a sense, I would think it would be easier to expand one of them into an entire film, if possible. Again, I don't know how these are written. Some short stories are very difficult to expand to feature-length film, and some are much easier. But I don't know if I'm not going to know until I see the product, but it does concern me with the way, because, like I said, because of Kevin Smith's movies, because he left the View Askew universe, which is really what made him popular, and he started doing all these other random films. He did stuff like Yoga Hosers, which was horrible, Tusk, which was horrible, Red State, which was just kind of weird, and then he comes back with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, and now this is his next film. So I think that he can do a horror comedy well. He's good with humor. The problem is that, and maybe the fact that he has a co-writer on this makes me feel a little bit better, but his problem, I think, has been is that his brand of humor has gotten a bit worn out in recent years, and he hasn't been, taking it to a bit of a new level, I guess, what you could say, or breathing something new into it. A lot of it is very similar to his early work, and again, that gets stale after a while because we've seen it before. It doesn't feel like him anymore. It feels more like a cash grab or a nostalgia grab than it does an actual, than it does actual dialogue that he wrote just because, which is probably the case. That's just the way Kevin Smith is. But as usual, I'm going to put the link to the trailer below if you would like to watch it. And I want to know what you think. Do you think that Killroy Was Here is going to be a comeback to form for Kevin Smith now that he's kind of gotten Jay and Silent Bob Reboot under his belt? Do you think that this is going to be somehow maybe tied into the View Askew universe because Jason Mewes is also in the film? Do you think that Kevin Smith can pull off good horror comedy as opposed to some of his other attempts like Tusk, which I'm fairly certain was supposed to be a horror comedy, but definitely didn't feel like one? But like I said, I want to know what you think, so put your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?